everybody, so we are here today to make my mom's recipe of the clafoutis. So made some changes to the recipe, but it's a recipe that I make every year. First thing we'll be doing is like adding some butter to the pan. So we'll go very generously. Next step, as important, is the cherries. So since I've been living in the US, I've been peeling my cherries. So now I have like that wonderful cherry olive peeler that I use. So that process takes a bit of time, but it's still much nicer once you have the right tools to do so. So growing up, food was always amazing, but I never put much effort into the making of it, just in the eating part, which was always so much easier. And so I got all the way up to 18 years old, not knowing to do much more than just like boiling pasta and that's about it. So, but once I was in the north of France for design school, so like 600 miles away from home, so that's when I started requesting recipes and started making my own things and really enjoying the part of doing and learning all the different tricks and recipes. Before I forget, so my mom's recipe calls for 350 grams of cherries. To be frank, like I don't measure those quantities anymore. What I just do is like I will fill up, so you only have like little cracks in which the dough will be able to go and fill in. And now the funny story. Clafoutis, you're supposed to keep the pit in the cherries when you're making those clafoutis. And like in France, it's a very well-known thing. Like you keep them, the cherry doesn't bleed in the whole thing, and you keep the nice flavor, and you have like that like wooden flavor that comes from the pit, which is absolutely delicious. The first time I made one of those clafoutis, I followed my mom's recipe and completely forgot to tell my coworkers. And like the first coworker to chew on the pit almost broke a tooth, and like the whole clafoutis was left in the dish. Like nobody touched it again. And so I took it back home, enjoyed it all for myself. Sorry for the disruption. I'm missing one. This one is soft as well. It's quite a game. If I lose, I eat them all. This one is good. This one as well. I got the one. Alright. Well, we only have that one left. I take it as the real one and I go wash my hands. Yeah, clafoutis to me growing up was a summer recipe. Not something that my mom used to do very frequently, but I was eating it like here and there, and it comes like more or less with the cherry season. And so she was making it like every once in a while, and like when I moved to the US, I was craving a lot of the recipes that I used to enjoy as a kid, and so I asked for quite a few of them. So I had that clafoutis recipe that I enjoyed, and I was finding like pretty good cherries, so I was just, hey, why not do that again so I can enjoy and share with people this nice flavor that I enjoy. So she sent me that recipe, which I only printed today after like 12 years in the US. But the funny thing is I almost know that recipe by heart. Like from making it like so many times, you know, I know it, I know the quantities, I know what to expect, and I think it's more for reassurance, like knowing that I still have that connection to that recipe, that I get confirmation on like all the proportions, quantities. I always get through the same question because my mom wrote the temperature of the oven at thermostat 6, so thermostat 6, which is like the range of temperature to use, but like between Celsius, Fahrenheit and everything, I always forget what that is supposed to be. The secret is thermostat 6 is like 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I typically put at 360 or slightly more because I prefer mine to be a little more baked. So it is 180 Celsius for all the French people following us. If you ever play with one of those, make things much easier putting the cherry head down. You remove the tail and you put like the butt up in the air. Makes it easier to pit them. Alright, so slowly, as we can see here, like it's filling up. So fewer and fewer gaps all over the place here. So far I don't have much request for that recipe, which is contrary to the way like the dish or the plate gets empty when I bring it over to like either the office or a friend's party. Like it looks like everybody really enjoys the food. Alright, that looks about right. The dish is fairly full. You even them out so the batter then will be able to go in between the cherries. Next step, so the oven is on now. What I like to do, and people have different ways of doing things, I like to get all my dry ingredients on one side, my wet ingredients on the other. That avoids the flour to make like clumps and not mix well. But that recipe is fairly straightforward. Clafoutis may have like very different texture depending on who is making them and what recipe they follow. I don't really like the flan texture that some clafoutis may have. You know, it feels a little more like custard. It's nice, but it's not what I expect from a clafoutis. My mom's recipe called for like some flour, but a lot of almond flour, which I really love the graininess, the texture that it gives to the final clafoutis. So this one is simple: 1 tablespoon of conventional, like regular flour, and 4 tablespoons of the almond flour. My mom's original recipe calls for like 150 grams of sugar, which is a lot. What I like to do is using maple syrup. I really like the flavor that you get, and also as peeling the cherries remove some of the wood flavor that you will get. These bring back that nice smoky flavor that you get from the wood. So I like putting like a part of my sugar as maple syrup. So instead of the 150 grams, I will go for 50 grams. Those cherries are very good. Like I get cherries that are like, you know, dark cherries that are very sweet. So they already have their own content in sugar. Forgot to bring some salt in there. Not much, but still need a little bit. And I think that's about it for dry ingredient. Let me check again the recipe. Yep. 3 eggs that I need. So I get those eggs from the Eastern market. For anyone who is from the Detroit area, they get the best eggs. And as you can see, I suck at breaking eggs. So 1. Bring in the fork. Alright, good all scrambled eggs. About a glass of milk, so use this one from my kitchen, but you can put more, less. A little bit of the maple syrup that I promised earlier. Alright. So one side dry ingredients, the other side wet ingredients. Bring that together, and the texture in the end will still be like fairly liquid because it's going into the dish with the cherries, so it has to be able to flow in between them. Another thing also that makes the clafoutis a little special is, I don't know how you call that in English, whether it's a pie or it's I don't know what would be the proper name for it, but it's one of those that doesn't come with a crust. You just like pour the batter with the cherries, and voila, that clafoutis recipe is so likable because it's easy to make. If you have some sliced almonds, that goes pretty well on top. They become a little crunchy from baking, so it's a very nice addition to the whole mix. Some memories that come easily is like picking wild berries, or like blackberries or some raspberries, and my mom making jam for the year, so she was making that till 11:30 p.m. The kitchen was so hot, but the smells and the memories attached to that are just like pretty incredible. Once you start cooking, making food yourself, then the sharing is as important as the tasting part, because like when you're making it, you think about the person you're inviting. You're just like, oh, I really hope that person will like that dish. You have your guests in mind, and so the experience of sharing is like so important. Not really, like I feel like recipes tend to be something that sticks in time. but obviously like COVID changed the way you invite people, so it's less frequent, you have to plan ahead. Maybe you tend to be more careful with finger food, but yeah, it's all common sense, and hopefully we can get back to a point that we have like a little more normalcy in the way we share food.